texture, and it is fully dry now. So what I've done is I've applied just a little burnt sienna in 3 corners, and I'm going to go ahead and just give this a little bit of warmth in the background. I've got a little bit of water on my brush, and this does not have to be perfect because you're going to go over this, but if you just add this in this way, this is going to give you a little bit of background depth. You can add as much of this color as you like, a little darker in some areas, a little lighter in other areas. And just let this coat dry. You can let it dry a full day or just a few hours, or you take your blow dryer to it. We are going to go over that background and fill it in a bit. So this doesn't have to be like a fully dry coat, but it should be pretty dry. Okay. Okay, so this is fairly dry now. I'm going to, it's not fully dry actually, I just took a blow dryer to it real quickly. I'm going to pop a little bit of white down just to go over this. Really just using a flat brush. It's the same flat brush I had. It's still got a little bit of paint on it, a little bit wet. We wanted to create a little bit of a depth in the background, a little bit of warmth. You could use a cool color back there, of course, a gray, a blue, a bright color. But for this, we're just going to kind of be doing the neutral, muted color. So this white, just a very light coat can go over it. And as you see, I'm not fully covering that background because I do want some of it to read through. And I don't want any real harsh lines. So I'm going to just take my brush and kind of scrum over that. Any areas that are depositing a little too much paint, you can pick up with a paper towel or your brush. But this is looking pretty much like what I want it to. And it's always a good idea to use your brush in different directions, like I'm doing here. So everything just doesn't look either, you know, up and down or sideways, because that's sideways, horizontal. That's just a very sort of a rookie move, you know. Of course, I've done all of these, so I can definitely counsel you on all the rookie moves to avoid in the future. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry just a bit, and then we're going to come back over it with some more color, of course. All right, so that last layer has dried, and right now what I've done is I've mixed up just a little primary blue, some bronze acrylic ink, and some glaze. You can mix up any type of any colors you want. You do not have to choose these exact. Of course, to get this exact look, you would need those, but you know, work with whatever you have. Mixing that up here. I just wanted sort of a dulled down blue. And this is mixing up real pretty. So I've got this sort of color now. I'm going to go over, let's see. I'm going to first just give my glaze a little mist. I added just a little bit of water just to keep this really nice and light. And we're working with small quantity because, of course, we've got a very small canvas here. Now, since I used my brush to mix, and this is one tip I will give you, I've given this before in my videos, you're going to get some striations of color, which I actually really like when doing abstract. If you don't want any striations of color, meaning some areas where it comes off a little darker because the brush caught a little more paint, because you use the actual brush to mix your color, then use a different tool. And do not use the brush you are using to paint with, Make sure your paint is incredibly well blended and your glaze or medium, whatever you're using, before you go ahead and apply it, and that will give you a much smoother base coat. But I actually like these differences in color, especially when I'm working on abstracts like this that are just sort of free form. So I'm just going over this with my light glaze. I'm not going to pick it up everywhere. I'm going in a couple of different strokes, up and down, horizontally. This is giving me some interesting look here. It's picking up some bits of where the paint probably wasn't fully dry underneath. So that's, you know, if you want it fully dry and you don't want any of that to happen, wait a good 24 hours. I just did a quick blow dryer over this. I actually like the way some of these effects turn out, but if I'm doing something and I know I need it to be absolutely perfect and have a beautiful finish, then I have to go ahead and just wait my time. So this is giving me the really pretty glazed transparency look that I'm looking for. It's going to give me a nice finish because we're using a high quality medium in that glaze. The glaze I used is the golden acrylic glazing liquid satin. I like this brand. You can use whatever you like. There are many good ones on the market. This is just the one I always happen to kind of gravitate toward because I know the results that I get with it, and they're really nice. I'm going to do a little down here with this color, using a little different stroke here, or laying my brush flat, kind of scrumming it back and forth, picking up some of that texture, some of it, and just leaving it how it is on the other spots. So it's not going to be fully covered if I'm not using my brush like I did up here. So I'm getting two completely different looks by doing that. Now when you work with the glaze, and if you've taken any of my tutorials before with glazes, you know how much I stress waiting for this layer to dry. You cannot just blow dry your way through this one. This is with something small like this, you might be able to come back and work on it later that day. I would, you know, if you really want it to be a nice finished piece, or you're doing something higher end, either for sale or to, you know, hang on your wall, give as a gift, definitely give it 24 hours, 48 even. 24 is enough. But I do find when you start building up layers of glazes, I like to give it at least 24 to 48 hours in between. And, you know, if you have 2 or 3 other paintings you're working on at the same time, you can now set this one aside, bring the other one in, and then pick it up again in your next painting session. So right now we're going to let this go ahead and dry, and then we'll come back and we'll add yet another layer of color. Okay, so we're back. This has completely dried. And I'm going to be working with a wet flat brush, a little bit of glaze, and a little bit of an acrylic bronze color. Using this right here. You can use the sienna that we used if you have that on hand, or whatever you like. I'm going to go over this with this very light coat of the bronze. Just to give me a little bit different color in the background here. I don't want a lot of this, that's why I mixed it with the glaze. Just want to add a little bit of depth with the bronze over this blue. Now what I'm going to do is All right, so now I'm adding some more of the sienna. And sometimes I just add a little bit of a different variance of a color like that bronze, just to bring in one more tone. You don't have to do that. It's definitely up to you. It's a personal preference, because I do like to have multi-tones going on within the painting. Sometimes you can get that with just a couple of colors mixed together and then use them in various tones and shades throughout the painting. And sometimes just introducing a whole nother color is really going to give it to you best. So this, I'm kind of stamping this down and scrumming it through here. Some more of the blue that I had already mixed. I need a little more of that. Adding a little more depth down here with my brush and color, and working over it. I really don't want full-on perfect color. Getting my brush to kind of smooth this out up here. Remove some of that. So I don't want the full, just want bits of that. Working again with this and laying it down with the side of my brush to create just some different looks versus full-on strokes. All right, so this looks like about where I want to leave it. So I've got a lot of that underneath coming through, as you can see, in various areas. I have the blue, but then I've also got a fair amount of that warmer color. And, you know, looking at it now, I'm thinking the bronze did make a little bit of a difference, just by delivering a little bit of an undertone to that, kind of quelling just a little bit of the warmth of it. But again, it's a personal choice to do underlayers like that. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry, and I'm not gonna fully dry it, or fully cure it, meaning I'm not gonna let it go full 24 hours, but I'm gonna either hit it with a blow dryer or just let it dry for a couple hours, and then we will resume. All right, so I'm mixing just a little more of that blue with what I had left over with the raw sienna. Just using my brush to, again, come over it with yet another layer. Bring it through the center here a little bit more on the texture. Stamp over some of that warmth. So you really do get the effect of multiple layers, because after all, we're applying multiple layers. I didn't add any more glaze because I want this to be a little more strength to really pop the color. And that is the one thing about working with glazes, is the underlayers or translucencies can be really pretty, and then you can layer, put a full-strength layer or two on top to get the same tones and shades, but in different strengths and saturations. So I'm getting a lot of different colors in here by layering all of these different layers of colors, one on top of the other. Some being very dry, some being not so dry, with layers applied, and really getting a unique look. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry a little bit and then we'll finish it up. Right now I'm going to work on this. It's dry. I'm going to take some paper towel, a little bit of titanium white, and I'm going to go over the center here where I've got my white, my mostly white spot, with just a little different look. Do a little bit of a removal with a wet bit of paper towel, just to pick up where it's deposited a little more paint than what I want. And diffuse it just a bit. Sometimes this is just a process of, you know, back and forth when you're doing these types of removal paintings. Okay, so I just have a little bit of a sort of snowiness in that area. But I have that texture reading through. Now back to my color, picking up a little more of that blue on my brush. And I'm going to just lay that very carefully over that center area, so it really picks up the blue over the white. It's going to show up a little more, if you can see that. Again, you can stamp down a little more color here and there, just to add a little more visual difference. And if you just lightly go back and forth over it, not using much paint on your brush at all, you can pick up the texture, deposit a little bit of color without, you know, huge amounts of paint being deposited, which we really don't want to deposit a lot of paint over an area that we've just worked to diffuse the color. And there you go. So on this painting, you can see there's multiple, there's texture, there's multiple layers of color by using some of those glazes and colors mixed together, and then just layering them, letting them dry, layering more color, layering more, and you have a lot of different tones coming through by doing that. You know, some of the warmth, some of the light, some of the blues, greens, a little bit of a sort of an olive color, brown, and various tones. And we didn't use that many paints, so that's how you can create multiple layers and get, you know, multiple shades and tones in one painting without actually using all of those different paint colors. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I really appreciate you watching, supporting my channel. Please give me a comment. a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.